Look around you. Right now, there are people in your life who are slowly draining your energy, your resources, and your potential. They're like vampires, but instead of blood, they're after something far more precious: your future. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 6 types of toxic requests that should immediately set off alarm bells in your head. These aren't just random tips. This is ancient Stoic wisdom packaged for the modern world. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who to keep at arm's length and why. Stay tuned, because number 4 is something that happens to almost everyone, and most people don't even realize they're falling for it. Number 1. The constant borrower. Can I just borrow some money? The first red flag we need to discuss is the person who's always asking to borrow money. Notice those air quotes? That's because these loans often turn into gifts, whether you like it or not. The ancient Stoics, particularly Seneca, warned about the dangers of lending money to friends. He wasn't just being stingy, he understood something fundamental about human nature. These people start small. It's just $20 for lunch, then 50 for gas. Before you know it, they're asking for substantial amounts with elaborate stories about why they need it. They always have an emergency, always have a crisis, and always promise to pay you back next week. Here's what makes this particularly toxic. It's not just about the money, it's about the manipulation of your goodwill. These individuals have mastered the art of making you feel guilty for hesitating. They'll remind you of that one time they helped you out, or they'll paint a vivid picture of their desperate situation. The Stoics taught us that true friendship isn't based on material exchange. When someone consistently asks for money, they're not treating you as a friend, they're treating you as a bank. But unlike a bank, they know you can't charge interest or send collectors. What makes this behavior especially dangerous is how it creates an unhealthy power dynamic. Once you've lent money multiple times, you become invested in their financial well-being. Not out of care, but out of hope that you'll get your money back. This is not friendship, this is financial codependency. The pattern becomes more apparent when you notice they never seem to learn from their financial mistakes. They're not asking for money to invest in themselves or create something sustainable. It's always to patch up another crisis, another emergency, another unexpected expense. These people often have a script they follow. They'll emphasize how temporary their situation is, how they've never asked anyone else, how you're their last hope. They might even try to inflate your ego. You're so good with money, I knew I could count on you. The real problem isn't the money itself. It's the breach of boundaries. Every time you give in, you're teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable. You're showing them that their poor planning can become your emergency. What's particularly insidious is how this affects your own financial planning. You start keeping extra money aside, not for your goals or emergencies, but for their inevitable next crisis. You're compromising your financial future for someone who isn't even trying to secure their own. The Stoic solution is clear. Establish firm boundaries early. Make it known that you don't mix friendship and money. If they need financial help, direct them to proper financial institutions or counseling services. This isn't being mean, it's being wise. Remember, true friends don't put their financial burdens on your shoulders. They respect your boundaries and work to solve their own problems. Anyone who consistently tries to make their financial problems your responsibility is not acting as a friend. Number 2, the emotional vampire. I need you to always be available. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly common in our hyper-connected world: the person who demands constant emotional availability. This isn't about being there for a friend in crisis. This is about someone who turns every moment of their life into a crisis that requires your immediate attention. These individuals have mastered the art of making their problems feel like emergencies that only you can solve. They'll text you at 3 a.m. about their relationship drama, expect immediate responses to their emotional outbursts, and demand your undivided attention whenever they feel overwhelmed. The Stoics emphasize the importance of maintaining tranquility of mind. These emotional vampires directly threaten that tranquility by creating a constant state of alert in your life. You start feeling anxious every time your phone buzzes, wondering what new drama awaits. What makes this particularly dangerous is how it's often disguised as deep friendship or trust. They'll say things like, "You're the only one who understands me," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." This feels flattering at first, but it's actually a form of emotional manipulation. These people have a way of making their emotions your responsibility. If you don't respond quickly enough, they might guilt trip you. If you set boundaries, they might accuse you of abandoning them. They've essentially made you their unpaid, unqualified therapist. The pattern becomes exhausting because there's never any real progress. They'll have the same conversations, make the same mistakes, and ignore the same advice, all while expecting you to be their emotional support system through each repetition. Modern technology has made this type of person even more dangerous. They can reach you through multiple platforms, send chains of messages, and track whether you're online or have read their messages. Your digital space becomes their emotional dumping ground. The impact on your life is significant. You start canceling plans to be available for them. You feel guilty for having fun when they're struggling. Your own emotional well-being takes a back seat to their constant needs. What's particularly frustrating is how they often ignore any practical advice you offer. They don't want solutions, they want an audience for their drama. They've mistaken emotional dependency for friendship. The Stoics would point out that true friendship enhances both parties' lives. It doesn't drain one person to sustain the other. When someone consistently takes without giving, they're not engaging in friendship. They're practicing emotional parasitism. You need to understand that setting boundaries with these people isn't just about protecting your time and energy. It's about maintaining your own mental health and preventing their unhealthy coping mechanisms from becoming your problem. The solution isn't to cut them off completely, unless necessary, but to establish clear boundaries about when and how you're available. Encourage them to seek professional help and be firm about your limits. Your emotional well-being is just as important as theirs. Number 3. The opportunistic time thief. I just need a quick favor. Let's dive into something that might hit close to home. The person who constantly asks for quick favors that are neither quick nor really favors. These are the people who have mastered the art of making their problems your priority. And the Stoics had plenty to say about those who don't respect the finite nature of time. These individuals are masters of the micro-commitment. They'll start with something that seems harmless. Can you just look over this email? But before you know it, they're asking you to help them move, write their reports, or manage their projects. It's a slippery slope that starts with minutes and ends up costing you hours. What makes this particularly dangerous is how they frame their requests. They'll emphasize how easy it would be for someone with your skills, how it would only take a minute. They're not just asking for your time. They're subtly flattering you while downplaying the value of what they're requesting. The pattern becomes clear when you notice how these emergencies always seem to arise from their poor planning. They didn't start their work on time, didn't read the instructions, or didn't bother to learn the necessary skills. Yet somehow, their lack of preparation becomes your urgent task. These time thieves have a special talent for making you feel responsible for their success or failure. They'll say things like, "I wouldn't know what to do without you," or "You're so much better at this than I am." It's manipulation wrapped in a compliment. The impact on your productivity is devastating. Every interruption, every quick question, breaks your focus and flow. Studies show it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain concentration after an interruption. They're not just taking the time you spend helping them, they're taking the recovery time too. What's particularly frustrating is how these people often don't value your time enough to prepare properly for your help. They'll ask for feedback on unfinished work, seek advice without doing basic research, or request assistance without having tried to solve the problem themselves. The Stoics emphasize the importance of using time wisely, treating it as our most precious resource. When someone consistently shows they don't respect your time, they're demonstrating they don't respect you. Time is the one resource you can never get back. These people often fail to develop their own skills because they've become dependent on yours. Why learn when they can just ask you? Why plan ahead when they can make their urgency your emergency? They're not just stealing your time, they're stunting their own growth. The solution requires firm boundaries and a clear understanding of your own priorities. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. As Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Remember, helping others is noble, but enabling their poor planning and lack of responsibility isn't helping. It's hurting both of you. True friendship involves mutual growth, not one-sided dependence. A professional will pay for your time and expertise. A time thief expects it for free and acts offended when you don't comply. Know the difference and act accordingly. Number 4. The responsibility shifter. Can you just handle this for me? This next type is particularly dangerous because they operate under the guise of trust and competence. These are the people who consistently try to offload their responsibilities onto you, not because they can't handle them, but because they've learned they don't have to. At first, it feels like a compliment. They trust you. They value your abilities. But look closer, and you'll see the pattern. They're not delegating, they're dumping. Every task they hand off comes with implicit pressure, and often without the authority or resources needed to complete it properly. The Stoics taught us about taking responsibility for our own actions and decisions. These people do the opposite. They actively avoid responsibility while trying to make you feel obligated to pick up their slack. It's a subtle form of manipulation that can infect both professional and personal relationships. What makes this behavior especially toxic is how it often comes packaged with praise. "You're so much better at this than anyone else," they'll say, or "I know I can always count on you." They're not acknowledging your skills. They're setting you up for future exploitation. These responsibility shifters have perfected the art of making their poor planning seem like shared challenges. They'll create crisis situations through their inaction, then present handling these crises as opportunities for you to shine or save the day. The real danger lies in how this behavior escalates. It starts with small tasks, but gradually grows until you find yourself managing major responsibilities that should never have been yours. You become the default solution to their problems. What's particularly frustrating is how they often retain the authority while shifting the responsibility. They want you to handle everything but still want to make the final decisions. You get all the stress with none of the control. This creates a dangerous dynamic where your success becomes tied to their failures. The better you are at handling their responsibilities, the more they'll dump on you. Your competence becomes your curse. These people often justify their behavior by claiming they're delegating or trusting you with important tasks. But real delegation includes proper resources, authority, and recognition. What they're doing is abandonment disguised as opportunity. The long-term impact on your career and personal life can be severe. While you're busy handling their responsibilities, who's handling yours? While you're putting out their fires, your own goals and projects sit neglected. The Stoic response would be to recognize this pattern early and establish clear boundaries. Remember Marcus Aurelius's wisdom about focusing on what's within your control and recognizing what isn't your responsibility. Your value isn't measured by how many other people's responsibilities you can handle. True growth comes from mastering your own duties, not from becoming everyone else's safety net. Number 5. The resource drainer. You have so much. Can't you share? Let's talk about something that often disguises itself as generosity or community spirit. The person who constantly expects you to share your resources while offering nothing in return. The Stoics weren't against sharing, but they understood the difference between generosity and exploitation. These people have an uncanny ability to spot what you have and immediately develop a need for it. Your new car? They need rides. Your vacation home? They need a free place to stay. Your professional connections? They need introductions. Nothing you have is off-limits to their requests. What makes this particularly toxic is how they frame their requests as tests of your character. They'll say things like, "I thought we were friends," or "It's not like it costs you anything extra." They're not just asking for resources. They're weaponizing your desire to be seen as a good person. The pattern becomes evident in how they never seem to reciprocate. When you need something, they're suddenly scarce or have convenient excuses. They've mastered the art of taking while maintaining an impression of temporary circumstances that never quite improve. These resource drainers often come with a sense of entitlement masked as familiarity. They'll make decisions about your resources without consulting you, invite others to use your things, or make promises on your behalf. Your boundaries mean nothing to them. What's particularly dangerous is how they can turn others against you if you refuse. They'll paint you as selfish or stingy, conveniently forgetting to mention all the times you've helped them. They're not just draining your resources, they're attempting to drain your reputation. The impact goes beyond the material cost. You start feeling anxious about acquiring anything new, knowing it will lead to more requests. Your success becomes a source of stress rather than satisfaction because of their constant expectation. These people often justify their behavior by pointing out your relative abundance. "You have so much," they'll say, or "you can afford it." They're not acknowledging your hard work or sacrifices. They're suggesting that your success obligates you to support them. The Stoics would point out that true virtue lies not in giving everything to everyone, but in making wise choices about how to use our resources for genuine good. Enabling someone's entitled behavior isn't virtuous, it's harmful to both parties. What's especially frustrating is how these people often waste or misuse what you share. They don't value it because they didn't earn it. Your carefully maintained resources become disposable items in their hands. The solution isn't to become miserly, but to establish clear boundaries about what you're willing to share and under what condition. Remember, even the most abundant well can run dry if too many people take without replenishing. Your resources are not community property. They're the result of your work, planning, and sacrifice. Anyone who can't respect that doesn't deserve access to them. Number 6. The dream killer. Be realistic. You can't do that. Finally, let's address the most insidious type of toxic person, the dream killer. These people don't ask for your money, time, or resources. Instead, they try to take something far more precious: your ambition and hope for the future. These individuals present themselves as realists or pragmatists, but their real function is to drag others down to their level of comfort. They've mastered the art of making mediocrity sound like wisdom and risk aversion look like maturity. The danger lies in how reasonable they sound. They'll say things like, "I'm just looking out for you," or "I don't want you to get hurt." Their concern seems genuine, but it's often rooted in their own fears and limitations, projected onto your dreams. What makes them particularly toxic is their timing. They wait until you're vulnerable, when you're just starting out, when you've faced a setback, or when you're at a crossroads. They strike when your defenses are down and your doubts are high. These dream killers often use past examples selectively. They'll point to every area in your field, but conveniently ignore the successes. They're not providing perspective. They're curating evidence to support their negative worldview. The pattern becomes clear in how they respond to any sign of progress. Instead of celebrating your small wins, they'll immediately point out potential future obstacles. They're not preparing you for challenges. They're trying to stop you before you start. What's particularly frustrating is how they often disguise their dream killing as experience or expertise. "I've been in this industry for years," they'll say, using their own limited experience or failures as universal truths. The Stoics taught us to examine our fears and face them rationally. These people do the opposite. They feed fears, amplify doubts, and encourage retreat from any meaningful challenge. They're not protecting you, they're imprisoning you. Their impact can last years or even decades if you let them influence your decisions. How many great ideas, businesses, and innovations have died because someone convinced their creator to be realistic or play it safe? What's especially dangerous is how they can infect your thinking even when they're not present. Their voices become the doubt in your head, the hesitation in your decisions, the brake on your ambition. The solution isn't to ignore all advice or criticism, but to carefully consider the source. Are they speaking from success or failure? From experience or fear? From a desire to help or a need to control? Remember, the most realistic person in the room isn't always the one who sees the most limitations. Sometimes it's the one who sees the most possibilities despite the challenges. These 6 types of people, the constant borrower, the emotional vampire, the time thief, the responsibility shifter, the resource drainer, and the dream killer, aren't just annoying personalities. They're obstacles to your growth, success, and peace of mind. The Stoics taught us that we can't control others, but we can control our response to them. Identifying these patterns is the first step. Setting boundaries is the second, and maintaining those boundaries despite guilt or manipulation is the crucial third. Remember, distance isn't just physical. You can create emotional and psychological distance while still being civil. Your life's energy is finite. Choose carefully who gets to access it. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more practical wisdom. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and keep those boundaries firm.